They hurried back to their fire site, eager to prepare their catch. Zara took charge of cleaning the fish, while Keto and Yara arranged the wood for the fire. They built a small structure with the sticks, careful to create a space for air to flow. Once the fire was lit, the warmth enveloped them like a comforting blanket. They placed the fish on a makeshift spit, cooking it over the flames. The smell of the roasting fish filled the air, making their mouths water. As they waited, they shared stories about their homes and families, laughter echoing through the woods. Zara felt a bond forming with her friends, deeper than any she had experienced before. They were not just surviving. They were thriving in each other's company. Finally, the fish was ready. Zara took a cautious bite, and her eyes widened with delight. "This is amazing," she exclaimed. Keto and Yara quickly followed suit, savoring the taste of their hard-earned meal. After finishing their feast, they sat by the fire, basking in its warmth. Zara couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They had faced the cold, gathered food, and built a fire together. They were learning to survive in this harsh world, and each challenge only made them stronger. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the snow-covered landscape, Zara realized how far they had come since their arrival at the Deathworlders camp. They were not just students anymore. They were becoming warriors, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With a heart full of hope, Zara looked at her friends. "We can do anything together," she said, and they all nodded in agreement. They knew that as long as they had each other, they could conquer any obstacle that came their way. The harsh winter. The next day dawned cold and bright. The sun peeked through the clouds, illuminating the blanket of snow that covered the ground. The Deathworlders camp was alive with the sounds of students chatting and laughing, their spirits high after yesterday's success. Zara, Keto, and Yara were ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Grath called them together once more, his voice cutting through the excitement. "Today, we will face a new challenge. Surviving the harsh winter conditions without relying on our shelters. You will learn how to find food and stay warm in extreme cold." Zara's stomach fluttered with nervousness. The idea of facing the cold without the safety of their shelter was daunting. Grath explained the importance of resourcefulness in survival. You must learn to adapt to your surroundings. The death world has its dangers, but it also offers resources. You just need to know where to look. The students listened intently, taking notes as Grath shared tips on finding edible plants, tracking animals, and building small fires. He emphasized that fire was their best friend in the cold. It would keep them warm and help them cook food. "Today we will divide into small groups. Each group must find food and build a fire," Grath instructed. "You will be tested on your ability to gather and prepare food for yourselves." Zara's heart raced with excitement and fear. She quickly teamed up with Keto and Yara again, feeling a sense of comfort in their partnership. Together, they set off into the woods, ready to put their skills to the test. As they walked, Zara pointed out different plants, remembering Grath's teachings. "Look, those berries are safe to eat," she exclaimed, picking a handful. Keto and Yara followed her lead, gathering what they could find. "Let's keep moving," Keto suggested. "We need to find something more substantial to eat." They continued deeper into the forest, their breath visible in the frigid air. After a while, they stumbled upon a frozen pond. The surface glistened under the sunlight, and Zara noticed movement beneath the ice. "Look! There might be fish in there," she shouted. The trio rushed to the edge of the pond, peering into the water. "Do you think we can catch them?" Yara asked, her eyes wide with excitement. "We need to figure out how," Keto replied, glancing around for materials. "Maybe we can break the ice and try to catch them with our hands." Zara thought for a moment. "Or we can build a small trap. It might be easier." She quickly explained her idea. They would create a makeshift trap using sticks and stones to funnel the fish toward a small hole in the ice. Working together, they collected sticks and stones, fashioning a simple trap near the edge of the pond. Once it was set, they waited patiently, hearts pounding with anticipation. As they stood there, the cold began to seep into their bones. Zara's fingers felt numb, and she shivered. "We should start a fire soon," she said. "We need to warm up." Keto nodded. "Let's gather some dry wood first." He led the way deeper into the woods, searching for anything that could be used as kindling. Zara and Yara followed closely behind, keeping an eye out for suitable materials. After a while, they found some dry branches nestled among the trees. "This should work," Zara said, her spirits lifting as they collected enough wood for a fire. They headed back to the pond, eager to warm up and check their trap. When they arrived, they discovered that their trap had worked. A small fish was trapped beneath the ice, swimming frantically. "We did it," Yara squealed, jumping up and down. But the joy was short-lived. As they approached the edge of the ice, Zara realized it was too thick to break with their bare hands. "We need something sharp," she said, looking around desperately. Keto searched the area and spotted a rock with a sharp edge. "Here, we can use this." He handed it to Zara, who carefully chipped away at the ice. With each strike, the ice cracked, and the fish became more frantic. Finally, with a loud crack, the ice broke, and Zara reached in, grabbing the fish. "I got it," she shouted, holding it up triumphantly. However, as they progressed, Zara began to notice that they were falling behind compared to the other teams. The pressure was mounting, and she could feel her heart racing. "We need to work faster," she urged, trying to motivate her friends. Keto looked worried. "But we can't rush. It has to be strong, or it won't keep us safe." He was right. They needed to find a balance between speed and quality. "Okay, let's take a deep breath," Zara said, taking a moment to gather her thoughts. "Let's focus on what we need to do. We can do this." With renewed determination, they picked up the pace. Zara suggested they each take on specific roles to be more efficient. Keto would gather more materials, Yara would work on weaving the leaves into the structure, and Zara would keep an eye on the overall stability of the shelter. As they worked, they faced challenges. Some of their materials slipped out of place, and they had to start over a few times. But each time they stumbled, they learned something new. They laughed at their mistakes, finding joy in the process rather than just the outcome. After hours of hard work, their shelter began to take shape. It stood tall and sturdy, with walls made from interwoven branches and leaves. Zara stepped back to admire their work. "I think we did it," she said, beaming with pride. As the time for judgment approached, they took a moment to gather their breath and prepare for Grath's evaluation. Other teams had completed impressive shelters, and Zara couldn't help but feel a little nervous. When Grath arrived, he inspected each shelter one by one. He praised the creativity and effort put into every design. Zara's heart raced as Grath approached their shelter. She held her breath, waiting for his feedback. Grath examined their shelter carefully, running his hands along the walls. He nodded appreciatively. "This is a well-constructed shelter. It has a solid base and will provide good protection against the wind." Zara's heart soared at his words. After the evaluations were done, Grath gathered everyone around. "I am proud of all of you. Each of you showed determination and teamwork, but there can only be one winner." He paused for dramatic effect. "And that winner is Zara, Keto, and Yara for their strong and well-built shelter." The cheers erupted around them, and Zara couldn't contain her excitement. They had won. Grath handed them a special treat: delicious energy bars made from fruits and nuts. The three friends hugged each other tightly, filled with joy. As they enjoyed their prize, Zara reflected on the day. It wasn't just about winning. It was about working together, learning from their challenges, and becoming stronger as a team. She felt grateful for her friends and the lessons they were learning in this harsh world. That night, as they sat around the campfire sharing stories, Zora realized that every challenge they faced brought them closer together. They were not just students anymore. They were becoming warriors in their own right, ready to face whatever the Deathworlders and this world had in store for them. With every lesson, every challenge, they were growing, learning, and preparing for the unknown adventures that lay ahead. The group spent the next few hours practicing their tracking and hunting skills. They didn't catch any more hares, but they learned valuable lessons about patience and teamwork. Each time they failed, they grew more determined to succeed. As the sun began to set, Graf gathered the students back together. "Today was about learning," he said, pride shining in his eyes. "You faced the elements and learned to work as a team. Hunting is not easy, but with practice, you will get better." Zara felt a sense of accomplishment. They hadn't caught anything, but they had learned so much. "I feel like we can do this," she told Keto and Yara. "Next time, we'll catch that hare." As they walked back to their camp, Zara couldn't help but smile. They were growing stronger, both as individuals and as a team. She looked forward to the challenges ahead, ready to face whatever came their way. The Deathworlders were teaching them invaluable skills, and Zara was determined to learn everything she could. That night, they sat around the fire, sharing stories of the day. Laughter filled the air as they talked about their failed attempts to catch the hare. Zara felt a sense of belonging, surrounded by her friends and the warmth of the fire. As the stars twinkled above, she realized that this journey was changing her. She was no longer just a student. She was becoming a survivor. And with each lesson, she was getting closer to understanding what it truly meant to thrive in this harsh world. "You said, the challenge of survival." The next morning brought with it a fresh layer of snow, blanketing the world in a shimmering white layer. Zara woke up feeling a mix of excitement and determination. Today was the day they would face a new challenge, and she was eager to prove herself. As she joined the other students for breakfast, the atmosphere was buzzing with anticipation. Graf stood at the front of the gathering, a serious look on his face. "Today, you will learn how to build shelters that can withstand the harsh winter conditions. Survival here depends on your ability to protect yourself from the elements." Zara's heart raced. Building a shelter sounded like a big task, but she was ready. Graf explained the importance of a good shelter. "A shelter will keep you warm and safe. You must know how to choose the right location and materials. Remember, your shelter must block the wind and keep the heat inside." Graf continued, "You will be divided into teams, and each team will construct their own shelter. The best one will win a prize, a special food treat from the Deathworlders." Excited murmurs filled the group. Everyone loved the idea of winning a special treat. Graf divided them into teams, and Zara found herself with Keto and Yara again. "Let's make the best shelter ever," Keto said, pumping his fist in the air. Zara and Yara nodded in agreement, their spirits high. The three friends quickly scouted the area for materials. They gathered branches, leaves, and even some large rocks to create a sturdy structure. "We should find a place that is sheltered from the wind," Zara suggested, remembering what Graf had taught them. After searching for a while, they found a spot behind some tall trees. The area was somewhat protected from the wind and had plenty of materials nearby. "This is perfect," Yara exclaimed, clapping her hands in excitement. As they began to work, Zara took charge of laying the foundation. She arranged the branches into a strong frame, while Keto and Yara started gathering more leaves and twigs to fill in the gaps. They worked together, laughing and encouraging each other. "Don't worry," Graf said, putting a reassuring hand on the shoulder of a worried student. "This is all part of learning. Now you know what to fix for next time." As the sun began to set, the students gathered around a fire to warm up and reflect on the day. The warmth spread through them, chasing away the chill that had seeped into their bones. Zara felt proud of what they had accomplished, and the laughter from their day echoed in her heart. As the stars twinkled in the sky, Graf spoke again. "You have learned an important lesson today. But remember, Surviving in this world is not just about building shelters. It is also about adapting and respecting the land. You must learn from it. The students listened, each of them aware that this was just the beginning of their journey. They were eager to learn more, to face the challenges that lay ahead. Zara smiled at Kido and Yara, her heart filled with excitement for the lessons yet to come. That night, as they settled down in their shelter, Zara reflected on the day. They had learned to build, to trust, and to work together. This experience was changing them, shaping them into something stronger. She felt ready to face whatever the Deathworlders would teach them next. Facing the elements. The next day dawned bright and cold. A crisp wind howled outside, and the snow crunched beneath their feet as Zara and her classmates emerged from their shelters. The Deathworlders had planned another lesson, and this time it would be all about survival skills in the harsh winter. Today, you will learn how to find food, Grath announced, his voice booming with enthusiasm. The students' eyes widened with curiosity and a hint of worry. They had heard stories of the wild animals that roamed the snowy landscape. Grath led the group further into the woods. In this world, knowing how to hunt and gather is essential. You will need to learn what is safe to eat and how to catch it. He gestured to the snowy landscape. But remember, the wilderness can be dangerous. Always stay alert. The students nodded, their hearts racing. Zara felt a mix of excitement and fear. She looked at Kido, who shared her nervousness. "Do you think we'll really have to hunt?" he asked quietly. "Maybe," Zara replied, "but they'll teach us how to do it safely." Grath stopped in a clearing. "First, we will learn about tracking animals. This means understanding the signs they leave behind." He pointed to some tracks in the snow. "These are from a snow hare. They are quick and can be tricky to catch. But if you follow the tracks, you might find their burrows." The students listened intently as Grath explained how to recognize different tracks. They learned about the different animals that lived in the area and which ones were safe to eat. Zara felt her confidence grow with each piece of knowledge they gained. After the lesson on tracking, Grath divided the students into small groups. Each group would try to follow the tracks they had learned about. Zara, Kido, and Yara were in one group. They set off cautiously, scanning the ground for any signs of life. As they walked, Zara spotted some fresh tracks leading towards a thicket of trees. "Look, these tracks are really fresh," she whispered, excitement bubbling in her chest. The trio followed the tracks, their hearts racing with anticipation. Suddenly, a loud rustling noise echoed from the bushes. The three friends froze, eyes wide. They shared nervous glances, unsure of what to do. Grath's words echoed in Zara's mind. "Stay alert." "Should we go closer?" Yara asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Let's see what it is," Kido said, his curiosity getting the better of him. They crept closer, hearts pounding. As they peered through the branches, they spotted a snow hare nibbling on some frozen grass. Its ears twitched as it looked around, aware of their presence. Zara felt a mix of awe and fear. "It's so beautiful," she whispered. Grath appeared behind them, smiling. "Now is your chance to see if you can catch it. Remember, you have to be quiet and patient." The students nodded, their excitement returning. They knew they had to work together. Zara took a deep breath, focusing on the task at hand. "I'll try to circle around it while you two keep it distracted," she said. Kido and Yara nodded, ready to help. They quietly moved in closer to the hare, trying to keep their movements slow and steady. Zara made her way behind the animal, hoping to get into position. Just as Zara was about to make her move, the hare caught sight of her and darted away. "No," she exclaimed, frustration washing over her. "It's okay," Grath said, his voice calm. "Hunting takes practice. You need to learn how to move without being seen. Let's try again." The first lesson. The sun rose slowly over the snowy horizon, casting a golden light across the land. The biting cold air filled the settlement. But inside the warm lodge, the students stirred from their sleep. Zara stretched and looked around at her classmates, who were still wrapped in their furs, snuggled close together for warmth. Excitement bubbled in her chest as she thought about their first lesson with the Deathworlders. Grath stood outside the lodge, his large silhouette framed against the brightening sky. He called out, "Rise and shine. It's time to learn how to survive." His voice echoed through the settlement, and the students hurried to get ready. As they gathered outside, the Deathworlders greeted them with cheerful smiles. Grath explained, "Today, you will learn how to build a shelter. In the wild, having a safe place is essential for surviving the harsh winters." The students listened intently, eager to soak up knowledge. They followed Grath into the nearby forest, where the trees stood tall and proud, their branches heavy with snow. "You must learn to work with the materials around you," Grath said, pointing to the trees. "Look for strong branches and sturdy bark. These will be your tools." Zara felt nervous but excited. She watched as Grath demonstrated how to select the best branches and lay them together to form the framework of a shelter. Use the natural shape of the trees to help you. Always think about how to stay warm and dry, he instructed. The students split into small groups, each tasked with building their own shelter. Zara and Keto teamed up with Yara, and they began searching for materials. They found strong branches and thick pieces of bark, carefully gathering them together. "We should make it high enough to keep the wind out," Zara suggested, and Keto nodded in agreement. As they worked, Zara noticed the Deathworlders watching them closely, offering tips and advice. One of the Deathworlders, a woman named Lyra, approached their group. "You need to tie the branches together," she said, showing them how to weave the bark into knots. "This will make your shelter strong." Zara followed her instructions, feeling a sense of accomplishment as the shelter began to take shape. They laughed and joked, forgetting the cold around them. With Lyra's help, their shelter started looking sturdy. But not every group was having the same success. A few students were struggling to put their shelters together. Grath noticed and called everyone to gather around. "This is not just about building a shelter. It's about teamwork. You must help each other." He looked at the students with encouragement. "In this world, you must rely on your friends and learn to trust one another." The students nodded, understanding the lesson. They returned to their groups, sharing ideas and helping each other. Zara felt a new sense of unity. Everyone was learning together, and they all wanted to succeed. After hours of hard work, the shelters were complete. Each group stood proudly beside their creation. Zara looked at their shelter, which stood tall against the snowy backdrop. "We did it," she exclaimed, grinning at Keto and Yara. Grath and Lyra walked around, inspecting each shelter. They offered praise and suggestions for improvement. "You all did well," Grath said, his deep voice booming. "But remember, a shelter is not just about being strong. It must also be warm." With that, he invited them to test their shelters. "Let's see how well they can hold up against the cold." The students were excited but nervous. Grath and Lyra began throwing snowballs at the students' shelters, watching carefully to see how they held up. The students cheered as their shelters stood strong, but one group's shelter collapsed under the weight of the snowballs. Laughter filled the air, and even the Deathworlders chuckled good-naturedly. The arrival. The cold winds howled across the snowy landscape of the planet Thalax. A group of alien students stepped off their small spaceship, shivering as they adjusted to the freezing temperatures. The ground was covered in thick layers of white snow, and the sky was a dull gray. They had traveled far from their home planet, excited yet nervous about what lay ahead. This was a chance to learn about the legendary Deathworlders, beings said to survive the harshest conditions in the galaxy. As the students gathered their gear, they exchanged worried glances. Among them was Zora, a tall student with bright blue skin and wide eyes. She looked at her friend, Keto, who was small and had green scales. "Do you really think we can survive here?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Keto shrugged, unsure. "I hope so. But I've heard stories. They say the Deathworlders are tough. The group leader, Professor Xaler, clapped his hands to get their attention. Listen up, everyone. We are here to learn from the Deathworlders. They have survived in this cold for centuries. We must respect their ways. His serious tone made them silent, but the worry lingered in their hearts. As they walked towards the nearest settlement, the students noticed strange structures made of wood and stone. They looked old and rugged but seemed to blend perfectly with the snowy landscape. The buildings had no sharp edges, almost as if they had been shaped by the very winds that whipped around them. "Look!" shouted a student named Yara, pointing to a group of figures moving through the snow. The Deathworlders were tall and strong, wearing thick furs that looked warm and cozy. Their skin was tough and weathered, marked by years of surviving in this unforgiving world. As the students approached, the Deathworlders turned to greet them with curious eyes. One of the Deathworlders, a giant named Grath, stepped forward. He had a fierce look, but his smile was warm. "Welcome, visitors. We are glad you are here. You will learn to survive as we do." His voice was deep and strong, sending a shiver down Zora's spine. The students hesitated, feeling both fear and excitement. Grath noticed their unease. "Do not worry. You will be safe with us. But you must be willing to learn and work hard." He gestured for them to follow him into the settlement. Inside the settlement, the warmth hit them like a wave. The walls were lined with fur and wood, creating a cozy atmosphere. The smell of cooked meat filled the air, and their stomachs growled in response. A few Deathworlders sat around a large fire, sharing stories and laughter. The students watched in awe, realizing they were in a world very different from their own. As the students settled in, Grath began to explain the basics of survival in this harsh environment. In Thulax, the winters are long and brutal. You must learn to find food, build shelters, and work together. Only then will you survive. His words echoed in the room, and the students nodded, understanding the gravity of their situation. Later, as night fell, the stars began to twinkle above. The students gathered around the fire with the Deathworlders. Zara felt a mix of fear and excitement. She watched as the Deathworlders shared stories of their struggles against the cold, the storms, and the wild creatures that roamed the land. They spoke of battles fought and friendships forged, painting a picture of resilience and strength. Keto turned to Zora, his eyes wide with admiration. "They are amazing. I never thought I would meet people like this." Zora agreed, feeling inspired by the Deathworlders' spirit. As the fire crackled, Grath invited the students to share their own stories. Zara stood up, her voice shaky but determined. "We come from a planet where the weather is warm and pleasant. We do not face the challenges you do, but we want to learn from you, to understand how to survive in this cold." Grath nodded, impressed. "That is the first step, my friend. A good learner is always curious and brave." The other Deathworlders listened intently, their faces reflecting pride in their new visitors. The night wore on, and the students found comfort in the Deathworlders' company. They felt a sense of unity growing between them, even though they were from different worlds. The fire flickered, and laughter filled the air, pushing away the fears that had clouded their minds. As they settled into their sleeping quarters, Zora's thoughts raced. She wondered what the next day would bring. Would they truly learn to survive in this brutal winter? Would they gain the respect of the Deathworlders? Only time would tell. But one thing was clear. They had embarked on a journey that would change them forever. The students drifted off to sleep, dreaming of the challenges ahead and the incredible beings they would come to know.